Hello and welcome to the Monday edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks, where I take a comprehensive look at severe weather chances for the next few days and really sometimes out to 7 days. For the immediate future, the next 2 days seem really critical. Let's dive into it. And as a summary of what might happen over the next 7 days, this is a chart I've been starting out with a lot here lately because this is produced by Northern Illinois University, and it's a supercell composite. So they just add up the supercell chances for each pixel over the 7 days and give you a percentage chance. And while the percentages might change a little bit, what I find interesting is what the pattern represents, which is the same kind of thunderstorm slide pattern we've seen lately, where little disturbances come out of the northwest or west northwest and cross the country like that. So again, this doesn't represent any particular wave of storms, but it does kind of sum up basically what I'm about to tell you. So let's take a look at today. A perfect example. We have this huge gap here where no storms are even really forecast to form. This is cooler, less humid, more stable air, which a lot of people who have been baking in the heat or have come to appreciate here today. It's very nice. But we still have this split in the severe weather possibilities. Obviously, we have one over here to the southeast of this stable air, and what we call the return flow side of that stable air, where the humidity is increasing and instability is increasing, and we have another disturbance crossing through. So let's take a look at these one at a time. Each is actually kind of unique today. The severe thunderstorm risk out to the east, which includes major cities like the Winston-Salem area, Charlotte, also on over to Knoxville and Chattanooga. Asheville is included in that, Greenville barely. And so this is a level 2 out of 5 risk. This is basically meant to represent the coverage of storms, how many people will be affected by that, and a little bit of severity as well. But we can definitely break down the severity by type. So if you hadn't thought about it, severe weather really is comprised of, well, a tornado, obviously, but also wind and hail, and there are criteria for that. So a severe wind risk is anything that gusts over 59 miles per hour. So this is the 30% chance of severe wind gusts within that slight risk area. So a pretty high chance. I look at this day to day, and with the 30s don't pop up a whole lot this time of year. Wind is going to do it if it does, if any of the three are going to do it. But I just want to let you know that from Winston-Salem back over, curving over onto the Knoxville area, Asheville, and Chattanooga are in that higher percentage chance. So it's 30% chance of that wind gust within a 25-mile radius. And that's really it. Hail and tornadoes not really part of that. An isolated tornado is always possible with severe weather, but it's not something that the Storm Prediction Center, which is where these particular maps are made, has really gotten excited about or chosen to emphasize. Now, this other area it comprises of all three. So we have this slight risk area that covers parts of Minnesota, South Dakota, and Nebraska, and that's a level 2. The tornado risk is right in the heart of that. So from basically western Minnesota down through southeastern portions of South Dakota, including Sioux Falls, and back over into central Nebraska. That does go as far south as North Platte. That's a 2% chance of any strength tornado occurring, again, within 25 miles. The wind risk, they have actually chosen, the SPC, to not only outline this 15% area of the criteria for severe wind, but also have chosen to go with this hatched area here, which is an attempt to actually go one step further and look at the intensity. So you can see this is one of the 3 intensity levels, and you can see clearly that this area here, it's still in the 15% bubble, but there's a little bit more of a knowledge, I guess you could say, of how that wind is going to be distributed. So if you just add these two percentages up, 55 and 31, so you're talking about 86% chance of wind staying below 74 miles per hour or greater, and more than a 50-50 chance they'll stay below 63 miles per hour. So that just kind of gives you an intensity estimate on that wind risk. And hail risk, there's only 2 categories for that, and you can see this area here has been emphasized largely within that 15% area, but they don't always have to coincide. And you can see how that breaks down right here. Again, well into the 80% chance it's going to stay on the lower end of severe hail intensity. Now, NATOcast is another learning machine product. It does kind of put a little bit of a tornado risk there, only 2% though, and it's smack dab right there in southwest and west Minnesota, and doesn't really talk a whole lot about any other place. They also produce a wind and hail risk. Hail doesn't show up this time of year very much, but the wind risk does kind of emphasize that corridor I talked about there from North Carolina curving back down into Tennessee, and that is a 30% risk as well. So very, very coincident with the SPC forecast. CSU, Colorado State University, also does a panel outlook here. No mention of tornadoes at all up in here. But they do talk a little bit about hail risk here, and the wind risk is in that same area. Not too much of an emphasis. I would have expected maybe to see more of a 30% probability, that kind of pinkish red color in the middle of this, but they have chosen not to do that. Now, let's move on to Tuesday, where we have this large area of marginal risk. That's one. And then a more concentrated area of better severe weather coverage, where you see the yellow, which is still referred to as the slight risk of severe storms. And I can zoom in on that a little bit, show you some of the major cities involved here. So we go from Columbia, Missouri through the Kansas City and St. Joe area, back up into Lincoln, Salina, Kansas, back up into Kearney, Nebraska, Omaha included in that as well. Here's how the severe weather breaks down for that. A more concentrated tornado risk from Omaha down to Topeka, probably including Kansas City, St. Joe, those areas, and back over to northern Kansas as well. Lincoln included in that too. That's a 2% chance of any strength tornado. The wind risk, again, is being emphasized not only by the 15% probability area, but in the core of that, there's a little bit, again, some statistical knowledge about how intense those winds might be, and it's the same percentages we reviewed for today's outlook. And then the hail, same deal. We have that 15% chance and a rather larger area where they have more confidence in describing how big the hail will be. So the way to interpret that is this is still the better chance for any severe hail, which, by the way, all that has to happen is that be a 1-inch hailstone, and that would qualify. But what it's saying is that the probability of hail is lower over here, but the chance of getting any of these size hailstones is the same, if that makes any sense. I did want to show you this. NATOcast did put a little bubble of tornado probability from Milwaukee down through Chicagoland, including Rockford and Janesville. I found that interesting, and really I put it in there primarily because Illinois has gotten beaten up literally this year by severe weather, so I thought they might be a little bit on edge and want to know about that possibility. Also, the wind risk. I've been watching this. I broadcast this from the Ozarks from Springfield right about here, and this is becoming more of an issue, I think, for late Tuesday evening, even into early Wednesday, where I think there's going to be a severe line of storms that produces some wind gusts here. And the SPC did, as you saw, extend that more down into this area than they did from their morning outlook. So I think that's significant. Another backing up of that is this wind risk profile from StormNet. Keep in mind, this is 1 a.m. to 1 p.m. the next day. So even though this says Tuesday, this is really meant to be late Tuesday and the early wee hours of Wednesday morning, with about a 1/4 chance of wind gusts exceeding the severe level right around the Rolla, Lebanon area here. And of course, I'm broadcasting from right there. And so this is CSU's outlook. Again, no tornado risks for tomorrow. The wind risk is a little more subdued, not really including this area I was just talking about here. So we'll see how that all pans out. Another day, Wednesday, that I think is curious is that the SPC has outlined the marginal risk area, number 1, out here through parts of Colorado, Kansas, and a big chunk of Nebraska. What's been showing up consistently, though, is this wind risk here from southern Missouri down to Arkansas, including parts of Mississippi and Tennessee. So I think there could be something to that. We'll see what happens. They won't update day 3 till well after I record this, which is roughly around 1 o'clock Central. So we'll see if that gets changed later today. And then the severe weather risk kind of sinks. And even though the SPC has not pulled the trigger on it, they don't always, and they are looking for a lot more, information basically. But CSU has, and I put this up here because if those yellow areas right there are potential areas where the SPC might actually enhance that forecast. Same for Friday, kind of the South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia area. Again, nothing official on that, but just something to keep an eye on. And then finally, we're going to sum up the supercell composites for 2 weeks ahead. So starting on the 24th and going through the 30th, same corridor. Ex- Except that maybe it's moved around. Maybe it was up here a couple of weeks ago, but I got to tell you, this is just an interesting thing for me. We well into summer that we continue these supercell composite percentages. I think really kind of high. And then finally, it looks like it backs off a little bit on week 3. This is the 31st of August through Labor Day weekend into the 6th of September timeframe. And even though the percentages are not very high, once again, I have to point out that this whole thunderstorm slide is still intact.